In the latest on a series of cyber attacks on U.S. infrastructure, a hacker attempted to poison the San Francisco Bay Area water supply. And it appeared to be pretty easy to get to that point. The hacker obtained a former employee's TeamViewer username and password, which allows users to remotely access their computers, and then deleted programs made to treat the area's drinking water. Joining us now to discuss, former acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf. What do you think of this? The fact that this could have happened, almost did happen, and looks like it was pretty easy.
Well, I think this just demonstrates again the vulnerability that most of our critical infrastructure here in the U.S. has to cyber-related attacks. Now, cyber attacks can be very complicated, or they can be very low scale, which seems to be in this case. But whether it's critical infrastructure like we saw with the Colonial Pipeline, or it's water treatment plants and other public sector critical infrastructure, I think it's all very concerning. And I think a number of these jurisdictions, the private sector and others, need to start investing in better cybersecurity practices, better cybersecurity hygiene, and different other mechanisms and practices that would guard against things like this. Now, in this case, it was detected. And obviously it was prevented at the end of the day. So that's a positive step forward. But just the likelihood and the ability for this to happen, I think, is concerning, that folks need to take notice and need to take proactive steps to address this in the future.
Yeah, and then I had read that just a couple of weeks after this incident in the San Francisco Bay Area, the hackers were able to, in a very similar way, get into the water treatment facilities in an area in Florida, the state of Florida, where they were able to reprogram the levels of lye in the water, which could eventually cause problems with people when it comes to digesting that water, nausea, the throat can swell up, that type of thing. So they were able to access it and actually reprogram it in the state of Florida. So, yeah, Chad, I think is frozen.
Yeah,
there.
That's absolutely correct. Again, yeah, well, I think you're absolutely correct, and it was detected in Florida as well. But again, it points out the nature of our critical infrastructure here in the U.S. and why it's a target. And we need to start taking this more seriously, not only from a private sector perspective, but also the federal government's perspective. And so I think that's critically important as we continue to move forward, because we know that these are targets. They're going to increasingly be targets as we look forward. And as states and nation states and other cyber actors start to look to that, they're unable to compete with the U.S. on a military battlefield. So they're turning to cybersecurity as their next battlefield. And we need to make sure that we have our defenses up. And that we have practices in place.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize that. Hopefully in the government they are as well. But then it begs the question, what do you do then? I mean, we can agree that there's a threat to the oil infrastructure. We've already seen that. To the food supply, we've seen that. The water supply. There's almost nothing that's off limits. So how do you deal with that? Most of us don't trust the federal government to do a good job overseeing too much, but it seems like it has to start there. But then how do you coordinate that so that it is effective?
Well, absolutely. I think those are all good questions. And first, it starts with the private sector. Most of these attacks are focused on the private sector first. So we need to make sure that they are taking this threat seriously, that they are engaging cybersecurity firms out there that will protect their networks and will alert them to any intrusions to their networks fairly quickly so they can address those fairly quickly as well. But then the federal government provides intelligence and can be offensive in this game. And so when we identify cyber actors, again, whether they're state control actors or non-state actors, in my view, we need to take the gloves off. We need to make sure that we are imposing some type of consequence against them. And whether that means eliciting our intelligence community, Cyber Command, which is out of DOD, and take some measures to these cyber criminals to let them know that it's not okay to target critical infrastructure. It's not okay to target anyone, but specifically critical infrastructure here in the U.S. That is a bridge too far, but without imposing those consequences, we're going to continue to see these attacks increase.
Chad, we're seeing all of these attacks on critical infrastructure right now, whether it be oil and gas pipelines, whether it be the water supply, and then also the food supply that was hit recently. Why do you think the Biden administration or others, or do you think they're so quick to discount any type of attack that could happen on our election system? I know a lot of folks are going to roll their eyes with me asking that question, but it does lend toward that question. Are our elections secure when we see what's happening with our infrastructure and these attempts, at least, to hack them?
Well, look, I think anytime we talk about cybersecurity vulnerabilities, whether it's elections or whether it's critical infrastructure, there's always going to be, the adversary is always going to try to stay a step ahead of us. So election security is not a one and done deal. So what we saw in 2016 was some vulnerabilities. We certainly shored the majority of those vulnerabilities up in 2020 from foreign adversaries. But that's not to say that they won't try that again, whether it's in 2022 or 2024. So DHS and other elements of the cyber community are going to have to stay involved and make sure that our election infrastructure is safe and secure from foreign interference, particularly as it regards to cybersecurity. But critical infrastructure is certainly there too. Again, the majority of these folks and adversaries are looking for a payday. They're looking for that ransom that folks are going to pay. And so, again, there's a number of things that the federal government, I know they're taking a look at.
Okay.
Administration is, and so it's important to continue down this road.
Fair enough. Chad Wolf, thank you so much, sir.